It is 2 in the morning in a city that does not know it is being watched. The streets are mostly empty. A delivery truck idles at a red light. A woman walks home from a late shift, keys between her fingers. A dog barks once from behind a chain-link fence, then goes quiet. The usual sounds. The usual dark, but somewhere in the city, moving without sound, without urgency, without any of the tells that would cause a human being to stop and stare, 2 figures are walking. They are not in a hurry. They do not need to be. They have been given an assignment, and assignments like this do not require speed. They require precision. You have read this story before, or you think you have. 2 angels, a city, fire from the sky. You know how it ends. But here is what most people miss. The story does not begin with fire. It begins with a walk, and if you understand what happened on that walk, everything you thought you knew about divine judgment changes. We are going back, not to a thought experiment, not to a hypothetical. We are going back to a specific night, in a specific city, with a specific set of events so thoroughly documented in the oldest legal religious text in human history that scholars have been picking it apart for 3,000 years and still cannot fully agree on what they saw. The city is called Sodom. The night is one of those nights when everything looks completely normal right up until it doesn't. This is not a science fiction scenario. This is not a theological thought experiment disconnected from real life. This is not a question only relevant to ancient desert civilizations. This is the most documented recurring pattern in the entire Bible, and according to that same Bible, it has never stopped operating. And here is what we are going to do today. We are going to walk through every major account in Scripture where God sent angelic beings to execute judgment on a city or a people. We are going to look at the triggers. We are going to look at the warnings. We are going to look at the rescues. And then, at the very end, I am going to show you one detail buried in the Sodom account that almost every teacher I have ever heard completely skips over. A detail about what the angels were doing in the hours before the fire fell. It will change the way you read every one of these stories. But we have to start at the beginning. Abraham is standing at the door of his tent when 3 men walk up out of nowhere. He is 99 years old, give or take. He has been following the voice of God across the desert for decades. He knows things most people do not know about divine encounters, about how the voice sounds, about what it means when something approaches you on the road and the air around it changes. So he does not wait to be greeted. He runs from the tent door, runs at 99, and bows to the ground. He says, "My Lord, if I have found favor in your eyes, do not pass your servant by." He knows. He cannot say how, but he knows. One of the 3 visitors is the Lord himself. The other 2 are malach, the Hebrew word we translate as angel, but which literally means sent one or messenger. It does not primarily describe what they are. It describes what they have been given to do. They carry an assignment. And on this particular afternoon, the assignment has 2 parts. Part 1, tell Abraham that his wife Sarah will have a son within the year. Part 2, and this is the part that makes Abraham go quiet, that makes him stand very still in the cooling evening air. Part 2 is harder to hear. God looks toward Sodom and says it plainly. The outcry against this city has become great. The sin has become grievous. I am going down to see whether it is as bad as the report I have received. And the 2 malach, 2 sent ones, walk away toward the south, toward Sodom. Abraham stays behind with God, and what happens next is one of the most extraordinary passages in all of Scripture. A man arguing with God, negotiating. Abraham says, "What if there are 50 righteous people in the city? Will you really sweep away the righteous with the wicked? What if there are 45, 40, 30, 20, 10? Each time God agrees. Each time Abraham lowers the number. God does not grow impatient. He does not remind Abraham who he is talking to. He accepts every negotiation. 10. If there are 10 righteous people in Sodom, I will spare it. There were not 10. By the time the 2 angels arrive at the city gate, Arriving at evening, the text says, the light going golden, then orange, then dark. The sentence has already been decided. Not impulsively, not without warning. There had been prophets. There had been Lot himself, who had been living in that city for years. There had been the rescue of the entire city by Abraham's army just a few chapters earlier. A second chance that the city took and then forgot. The cherem had come. That Hebrew legal term, cherem, describes something that has been set apart for destruction, devoted to it, not by passion but by covenant, like a legal verdict that has finally been signed and sealed. Sodom was cherem, and yet, stay with me, the angels did not go to the city to start the fire. They went to the city to find Lot. Now Lot is Abraham's nephew, and he has been living in Sodom by choice. He knows this city. He has watched it become what it has become. He sits at the gate, which is the position of a man of standing, a man with civic influence, and when he sees the two strangers, something moves in him that his neighbors clearly do not feel. He rises. He bows. He says, please, come to my house tonight. Don't sleep in the square. He knows the square is not safe for strangers. The angels agree, and then the city shows its true face. Before the night is over, the men of the city, not a fringe group, the text says all the men, from every part of the city, young and old, surround Lot's house demanding the strangers be handed over. Lot refuses. He offers his daughters instead, which is a horrifying decision that tells you everything about how much Lot's moral compass had been bent by years of living in Sodom. The angels pull Lot back inside. They strike the crowd with blindness. And still, even blinded, the men of the city are groping at the doorframe trying to find the entrance. Here's the part nobody tells you. This is the detail I want you to hold. The angels have seen enough, but they do not call down fire yet. They turn to Lot and they say, do you have anyone else here? Sons-in-law, sons, daughters, anyone you want to bring out of this city. The Lord is about to destroy it. Lot goes to his sons-in-law. He tells them, get up and leave. The Lord is going to destroy this city. The text says they thought he was joking, not afraid, not defiant. They thought he was joking. They went back to sleep. If you think Sodom is the most dramatic case in this category, you have not spent enough time in 2 Kings. It is somewhere around 701 BC. The Assyrian Empire under King Sennacherib has already destroyed the northern kingdom of Israel. Now Sennacherib has turned his attention south, to Jerusalem, and he has sent his field commander, a man called the Rabshakeh, to stand outside the walls of the city and shout insults at the defenders in their own language, loud enough for the people on the walls to hear every word. His message is simple. Look at everything the gods of other nations could not do against us. What makes you think your God will be any different? Inside Jerusalem, King Hezekiah tears his clothes. He goes to the temple. He spreads out the Rabshakeh's threatening letter before God, literally lays it on the altar, and prays one of the most direct prayers in the Old Testament. He does not dress it up. He says, you are the only true God. Sennacherib has destroyed all these nations and their gods. But those gods were just wood and stone. You are not. So please deliver us. The prophet Isaiah delivers the answer before nightfall. God has heard. And the message to Sennacherib, passed through a prophet to a king, about one of the most powerful armies in the world, is 4 words in essence. You have lifted your eyes against the Holy One of Israel. That is your mistake, and now you will go back the way you came. You will not shoot a single arrow into this city. That night an angel of the Lord went through the Assyrian camp. 1 angel, 1 night, 185,000 men dead by morning. Read that again slowly. 185,000. Not a plague working over days or weeks. Not a slow siege. 1 night, 1 being. And in the morning, Sennacherib, king of the world's most powerful empire, looks at what remains of his army and quietly turns around and walks home to Nineveh. He never fires a single arrow at Jerusalem. Josephus, writing in the 1st century in his record called The Jewish War, preserves a tradition that the death struck the camp suddenly and catastrophically overnight. But Josephus also makes something else clear that is easy to miss in the biblical account. The people of Jerusalem woke up to silence. They did not hear the army withdrawing. They heard nothing. They opened the gates and found 185,000 men who had been alive the night before. And this is where it gets remarkable. Nothing happens to Jerusalem. Think about what you would expect. A city under siege, its enemies miraculously destroyed overnight, should respond with parades, with feasting, with the kind of collective exhale that only comes when you thought you were finished and you were not, and there probably was some of that. But there is a deeper note in the text. Hezekiah had prayed. He had laid the letter on the altar. He had named what this was, not just a military conflict but a theological contest. And God had answered not by making Hezekiah's army stronger, not by sending reinforcements, but by sending one. One Malach, one sent one, dispatched from the courts of heaven, to do in one night what a coalition of kings could not accomplish in years. Now consider what that means translated into the modern question. What if God sent an angel to destroy a city today? In Sennacherib's case, the answer is, it would not look like a war. It would not look like a disaster film. It would look like mourning. It would look like silence where there used to be sound. It would look like walking out of your door and finding that something enormous had simply stopped. And the city being protected would spend the rest of its life asking whether it had done anything to deserve the mercy. There is a vision recorded in the 9th chapter of Ezekiel that most people have never read carefully. It happens before the Babylonians arrive, before the temple burns, before the exile. It is a vision of what is happening in the spiritual reality surrounding Jerusalem, while the physical city still stands, still looks normal, still has people going about their days in the market and the temple courts. Ezekiel sees 6 figures. Each one has a weapon, a slaughter weapon in his hand, and a 7th figure stands among them dressed in linen, carrying a writing kit like a scribe. God speaks to the figure in linen first. Walk through the city and put a mark on the forehead of everyone who grieves and laments over all the detestable things being done in it. Then he turns to the 6 with weapons. Follow him through the city. Do not show pity. But do not touch anyone who has the mark. And they begin. Pay attention to this. The mark is everything. The mark is the distinguishing factor between those swept up in the judgment and those who are passed over. And what determines who gets the mark? Not social status, not religious title, not how many sacrifices they have offered. The mark goes on those who grieve, those who are troubled by what they see around them, those who have not gone numb. Ezekiel watches as the 6 move through the city. He is horrified. He falls on his face and says, "Alas, Sovereign Lord, are you going to destroy the entire remnant of Israel?" And God answers, "The sin of the house is exceedingly great. The land is full of bloodshed, and the city is full of injustice. I will not show pity. This is grief. This is not triumphalism." The God of Ezekiel 9 is not satisfied with what is happening. He is completing a sentence that the city has written on itself over generations, and even in that moment, the scribe goes first, marking those who mourn, before the 6 with weapons begin. This is the architecture. This is a God who counts the grieving before he moves. And this brings us to what Josephus himself recorded in his eyewitness account of Jerusalem's destruction in 70 AD, published in the record we now call the Jewish War. Josephus was there. He was a Jewish commander who had surrendered to the Romans, which gave him a front row seat to the most catastrophic event in Jewish history since Babylon. He records something that historians have debated for 2,000 years. Before the siege tightened, before the famine, before the final assault, chariots and battalions of armed soldiers were seen in the sky above the city, moving through the clouds above Jerusalem. He is not writing fiction. He is writing the most detailed military chronicle of a siege in the ancient world, and he includes this detail as reported fact. Eusebius, the church historian writing in the late 3rd century, adds something even more striking. He quotes an earlier source, a writer named Josephus, who records that the Christians inside Jerusalem received a specific warning before the Roman siege and fled to a city called Pella, across the Jordan. They were gone before the walls closed. They had been warned. The apocalypto, the Greek word that gives us the book of Revelation, which literally means the uncovering, had come to those who were watching. Not everyone, but those who were paying attention. This is not a coincidence. This is the pattern completing itself again. The cry rises, the warning goes out, the sent ones arrive, and somewhere not in the headlines, not in the obvious places, the door is still open for those who have not gone to sleep. Now I want to go back to Sodom. Back to the detail I planted at the beginning, the thing I said almost every teacher misses. Because we are ready for it now. The angels arrive at night. The crowd surrounds the house. Lot's sons-in-law refuse to take the warning seriously. And now it is dawn, the text says, as morning began to dawn, and the angels do something I want you to see very carefully. They urge Lot. The Hebrew word used here means to press, to push, to accelerate. The angels are not standing in the doorway reading a formal pronouncement. They are grabbing him. The text says they seized his hand, the hand of his wife, the hands of his 2 daughters. Because the compassion of the Lord was on him, they drag him out of the city. And when he hesitates, even now, even with the angel's hands on his arms, Lot hesitates. One of them says, "Flee for your life. Do not look back. Do not stop anywhere in the valley. Flee to the mountains, or you will be swept away." Lot asks for one concession. "Let me go to a small town nearby instead of the mountains. It is closer. I can make it." The angel says, "Yes. Go. I cannot do anything until you reach it. I cannot do anything until you reach it." Read that sentence one more time. Because hidden in that plain line, in a translation you can look up yourself, is the theological hinge of the entire Sodom account. The fire cannot fall until the righteous are out. This is not a minor detail. This is everything. This is what Augustine understood when he wrote in City of God that the judgment of temporal cities is never the final story, that God's commitment to the righteous is never separable from his commitment to justice. You cannot have one without the other. The same hand that removes Lot is the same hand that tips the fire. Here is the modern bridge. Think about the last time a city was evacuated before a disaster. Think about the emergency broadcasts. The sirens going off before dawn. The officers knocking on doors in neighborhoods that did not believe the storm was coming. Think about the people who left, and the people who stood on their front steps and said, "I'll take my chances, this won't be as bad as they say." Think about the ones who thought he was joking. There has never been a moment of divine judgment in Scripture that was not preceded by a warning. There has never been a moment of divine judgment in Scripture that did not include a rescue attempt, often a desperate one, a physical seizure of the arm attempt, before the sentence was carried out. This is not a God who destroys casually. This is a God who destroys precisely, and his first act, every single time, is to get his people out. So what does that mean for the original question? What if God sent angels to destroy a city today? It means the more terrifying question is not about the angels. The angels are, in a strange way, the mercy at the end of a long line of mercies. The more terrifying question is, what were the days before the angels like? Who was warning? Who was standing in the gap like Abraham, counting the righteous, asking God to hold back just a little longer? Who was receiving the mark in Ezekiel's vision? Who was grieving, who had not gone numb? And who was sleeping? This is not a history lesson. This is not a guilt trip. This is not a question about someone else's city. This is the most personal question the Bible ever asks. Are you the kind of person the angel marks, or the kind of person who needs to be dragged? Let me give you 3 things to take away from everything we have seen today. The first, divine judgment in Scripture always has a pattern, a cry, a warning, a rescue attempt, then, and only then, the sentence. God is not impulsive. He is not arbitrary. He is working through a sequence that, once you see it, you cannot unsee in history, in the patterns of civilizations rising and collapsing across 6,000 years of human record. The second, the angels are never primarily destroyers. They are sent ones. And the first thing they are sent to do, every time, is find the people who can still be found. Lot being dragged by the hand is not an embarrassing footnote to the Sodom story. Lot being dragged by the hand is the Sodom story. The city could not be touched until the righteous were out. That single clause tells you everything about the God behind the assignment. The third, and this is the one I want you to carry with you, the terrifying and the comforting in this story are not opposite things. They are the same thing, seen from two angles. The same angel, the same hand, the same moment. If you are the kind of person who grieves what grieves God, who does not go numb, who is paying attention, then the arrival of the sent ones is not the thing you fear. It is the thing you have been waiting for. In the city that did not know it was being watched, there was one man sitting at the gate who looked up and recognized what was walking toward him. He ran to meet them. Which of those two people do you want to be? Drop your answer in the comments and tell me which city in scripture or in history you think fits this same pattern that we did not have time to cover today. I read every single one, and the best answers become future videos. If you are new here, welcome. We do this every week. We take the passages that everyone quotes and almost nobody reads up close. Hit subscribe and you will not miss the next one. And if no one has told you this recently, the God who sent the angels also sent the mark. He is still sending both. He has not stopped looking for 10,